Hi guys, today in this video we'll be covering chapter number 4. We have already covered in this series chapter 1, chapter 2 and chapter 3, which is Introduction to SCM, Modern Business Environment and Lean System and Innovation. Today in this video we are covering cost management techniques. So let's get started with this chapter. In the beginning of this chapter we are introduced with the differences between cost reduction and cost control. So let's have a quick look at it. Cost reduction is focusing on the achievement of real and permanent reduction in the cost, while cost control is basically dealing with establishment of standards, comparison of the actual cost with the standard cost or budgeted. Then cost reduction is saying that through cost reduction you will be able to achieve realistic savings, while the savings will be temporary in case of cost control. In cost reduction, the characteristics, the functionalities, the utility, the quality of the product or service is going to be retained. It is not going to be hampered, not going to be affected. In cost control, quality maintenance is not guaranteed, because when you're trying to achieve the standards, it might get compromised. Under cost reduction, you don't have to perform as per the standards. In fact, you have to challenge the standards. Under cost control, you have to perform as per the standards and you have to comply with the standards. So this makes cost reduction more dynamic, cost control less dynamic than cost reduction. Okay. Cost reduction is applicable in all areas of the business, because in any area cost is involved, then cost can be reduced. There is a possibility that this cost can be reduced. Therefore, cost reduction is possible to apply in each and every area. But for application of cost control, one important thing is required. When you are trying to when you are trying to control the cost, you have to set the standard. So standard setting is not possible for each and every area. Therefore, cost control has limited applicability. Okay. Cost reduction focuses on the present and the future cost. Cost control focuses on the past cost and the present cost. Cost reduction is a corrective measure. Cost control is a preventive measure. And cost reduction has some techniques. Some of the techniques under cost reduction would be value analysis, JIT, target costing, Kaizen costing, etc. A few techniques under cost control will be standard costing or budgetary control. There are certain prerequisites of cost control. One is that first of all you have to set the responsibilities. You have to delegate the responsibility, select the manager who's responsible for the cost center. Once you have done that, you have to establish a standard. So clearly define the target that is to be set. Once you have defined what is the target that the manager is required to achieve, you have to motivate the employees and the managers to achieve these targets. Okay. Then once they start working, try to achieve these targets, there should be timely and efficient reporting, and it should be followed with action. Okay, which means that once the report is being made on what is done and how it was supposed to happen, because we had established a standard, there is reporting, then there are going to be recommendations to improve it. So it should be followed by action. You just don't have to listen to the recommendations, you have to follow the recommendations, put it in action, see what is happening if you are applying these recommendations in your areas, and there should be an effective system of follow up to check what has happened, if the recommendations did work for you or not, were you able to achieve the standards. All of that has to happen. These are the prerequisites of cost control. What is the scope of cost reduction? First is through product design. The cost reduction is possibly happening majorly, or majority of the cost can be reduced at the design stage. When the product is being designed, you are selecting, let's say, the material composition, the number of units of the material, what kind of material, the quality of the material. Therefore, you are selecting the cost that is to be incurred for this particular product to be produced. Now, this product is going to be produced over the entire life of this product, and this product is going to require the same raw material that you have decided to use during the design stage. So, when you are designing the product, you have established the major amount of cost that is going to be incurred for the entire life cycle of this product. If this is happening, then the major or the majority of cost reduction can happen right at the product design phase. Okay. So what you can do is you can either go for cheaper substitute materials, you can go for reduction in the quantity of materials, alter the design in such a way that requires lesser quantity of materials, alter a design in such a way that increases the productivity, or if there could be standardization. That is going to be product design. Then organization. Organization is about organization structure. Okay, so you have to define each function, the responsible person for it, set the responsibility, delegate the responsibility, the authority. There should be a suitable channel for communication between the managers and the people under the organization, and then there should be cooperation between the various executives. Okay, this is organization. Third is factory layout equipment. So basically what you have to do is you have to utilize the existing equipments in such a way that it results in cost reduction. Basically efficient utilization of your equipments, and the layout also should be arranged in such a manner of these equipments that your productivity is high. And fourth is production plan, program and method. So you should have a proper procedure of working so that your resources, which are labor, material, are not wasted and are utilized in an optimum fashion. Through this, you will be able to achieve cost reduction. Now we have certain techniques under cost management techniques. We have four basically. One is target costing, life cycle costing is the second one, third is Pareto, and fourth is EMA. We're going to study all of them. Let's get started with target costing. So target costing is about the fact that what you are going to produce has to be researched upon first. What you're going to do is you're going to go for a market study, understand the customers' preferences, their requirements, their needs, the amount of money that they would be willing to spend on your product, which means the price that they are ready to pay for your product, and the competitors, if there are any in the market for that particular product, what they are doing, what they are offering, what kind of charges are they charging their customers. All of this has to be understood first, and then what you have to do is you have to develop a product. Now this product has to have these specified functionalities and qualities that you've just understood that the customers want. Then the selling price has to be anticipated at which the product is going to be purchased by the customers. The customers might appreciate this price, because again the price also has to be understood by studying the market forces. You already have to research the requirements of the customers and also the amount of money they will be willing to spend on your product. So you have to decide the price, you have to decide the functions, the quality, the specifications of the product, and design a product in such a manner that you are able to have these functionalities in your product. Also you are able to sell it at this particular price that you've understood by studying the market forces. Once you do this, you have to also understand that you are in here for making money. You have to make profit, right? So there has to be a desired level of profitability, mostly dependent upon the return on the assets that you want. The capital that you have invested in, you need some return on it. So this is going to form a base for you to create and calculate the desired level of profitability. Deduct the profit from the selling price that you have estimated, and then you will get your target cost. So it's very basic. The formula is going to be very simple. It's basically selling price minus profit. Okay, is going to give you your cost. The function is simple, but this selling price is dependent upon the estimation as per the market study. This profit is dependent upon your understanding and calculation of your return on your capital, and this cost is the ultimate outcome that you're getting after deducting profit from your selling price. This cost is called target cost. This is the cost at which you have to produce the product so that you can achieve this level of profitability by selling the product at this anticipated selling price, so that the customers are willing to purchase your product with these specified functionalities and qualities. This is target costing. Okay, now there are certain advantages of target costing. One is that there is a proactive approach. You are already, before even starting to develop and design the product, you are understanding what the market requirements are. Similarly, there is a reinforcement of the top to bottom commitment. All the employees, all the managers at each individual level, be it top level, be it middle level, be it operational level, all of them are going to be involved in this target costing. Because to achieve the target costing, there has to be involvement of each and every person in the organization. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. So it reinforces top to bottom commitment. Then there is a competitive future with market driven management. You are already looking at what is going to happen once you develop the product. You have not developed the product yet. You are going to develop it. But once you do develop, you already know that it is going to sell. Why? Because you developed the product on the basis of your understanding of the market requirements. You did go for the customer study, you did go for the market analysis, and then you decide to develop a product. So definitely it's going to require lesser time to market this product. Once you have developed, it will market itself. Competitive future. Market driven management, because we are already also understanding the price that the customers might be willing to pay for your product. So you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to calculate the cost, then set a profit margin and then decide the price, because at that price you might not be able to sell your product, you might not be able to compete with the competitors. But here, when you are already looking at the competitors' prices, you are already understanding what customers must be willing to pay for this kind of value. You are already setting the price as per the market forces minus the desired level of profitability, and you are calculating the cost. So it's the other way around, is the opposite way, or maybe is the correct way. So there is competitive future with market driven management. Then there is proper planning well ahead of actual production. You have not started the production yet, you have not even designed the product, but you are already planning well ahead to achieve this kind of cost that you have to achieve, because otherwise your profitability will be reduced, because the selling price cannot be changed much. Is the anticipated selling price, right? Enhances employee awareness and empowerment. See, understand this very carefully. The top level management just decide. The operational level workers and managers and employees actually work. So they know everything in much detailed manner than the top level guy would know. This is what I believe in. Okay, so the operational person will always know more in depth. So when you are applying target costing technique, you want to understand the estimates of cost, how the cost function is going to happen, how the things are going to work out, so that you can achieve this target cost, right? So in this, you need help from these employees who are actually working. And when you involve them in this decision making, when you ask them for their suggestions, when you ask them for help, they feel empowered, they feel valued. And this is why it enhances the employee awareness and empowerment. They also come to understand, why are we doing this, so that we can achieve this target cost. They get on with this mission of the organization. You involve them, make them feel empowered, and that is when they perform even better. Next is fosters partnership with suppliers. We similarly, just like employees, we can also ask suppliers, take help from them. We can ask them if there is any substitute material available which will cost us lesser, or if there is any material or technology available that can increase our productivity, or that can decrease our wastage, or any ways which can help us reduce our cost. Your supplies might also be helpful, so your partnership is going to improve. Then you have to minimize the non-value added activities so that you can reduce your overhead cost. Similarly, the value added activities which remain have to be selected so that they have the lowest cost. Reduce time to market is because you already know what the customers are going to purchase, and therefore on the basis of that only you have produced the product. So it's not going to be taking time for you to market this particular product, it is going to market itself. And finally, you are focusing on creating best value and not just lowest cost product, right? So best value at a lower cost, not just lowest cost. All right, this is the advantage of target costing. Now the main features of target costing is, first is, you have to, the very important part is designing of the new product, designing introduction of new products, the most important part. Okay, because this is the part where your maximum proportion of the costs are getting fixed, and this is the stage where your specifications and functionalities are being built into this product. So this is a stage which is of the most importance while applying target costing. Second is, you have to determine the selling price using the forecasting techniques, using the customer requirements understanding, using the analysis, and also using the customer's offerings. Then you have to establish a target production volume, because volume affects not just cost but also your price. So price and cost are both affected by the volume, so you have to also decide what volume are you going to produce. Then you have to determine the cost reduction target. Now what is this? So we have already established the target cost, right? Now you will be producing something. You have not yet produced anything. You will be, before production while designing the product, and different designs are being made so that we can achieve the target cost. With every design you are trying to estimate what will be your cost in this particular design, right? This estimation is going to give you like an estimated cost for that particular design. This estimated cost and this target cost are going to differ. The difference is called cost reduction target if your estimated cost is higher than the target cost, which is 99% of the case. This is going to be the scenario where your estimated cost is going to be higher than the target cost, of course, right? For obvious reasons. So target cost is lower than the estimated cost. You have to reduce the estimated cost to reach the target cost. For this, there is a cost reduction target. Okay, this cost reduction target is to be determined by deducting the target cost from the estimated cost based on the existing technology and components. Once you determine the cost reduction target, you start working, you use techniques to reduce this difference, and then you have to finally take a judgment call for the allowable cost and the target cost. What is the allowable cost now? So you understood that the estimated cost is higher than the target cost, right? We're trying to reduce it. Now you will work, and you will try to reduce it. It will get reduced, but there will be a level where you might find it very difficult to reduce it even further, although there might be a possibility to do it, but you are not able to do it. Let's just see this. Okay, so you are not able to reduce it further, or you don't have the time to. You have to market the product soon. So in this case, if the difference between your estimated cost and target cost is not very high and at an acceptable level, this will be your allowable cost. Okay, so you have to take a judgment. This was your target costing. We have few components of target costing. There are two components. One is value analysis, second is value engineering. You will also find third component, which is functional analysis. I'll explain to you all the three of them. First is value analysis and engineering. What we are trying to do here is that we are trying to break down the target into components. What target? What kind of target? This target costing. Okay, this is the target that you have to achieve. The target cost is the target, but not just that, it comes with specified functions and quality. Selling price is something not to be understood here. So target cost, specified functionality and quality. You are trying to produce a product. First, design a product with specified functions and quality at a target cost, right? So for this, you are required to break down the target into multiple components, and every component has to be studied in depth so that you can find opportunities to reduce the cost. Simple. Now there are three ways. First is value analysis. Value analysis is a very scientific approach which makes you focus on the material composition of your design, of your product, of course, and the production design, so that you can alter it, modify it, and by modifying it, you are trying to achieve the target cost. Okay, but while modifying it, you have to remember that you cannot reduce the value of your product. The value of the product should not be reduced, otherwise it will not be as per the specifications of the customers. But you are required to reduce the cost. Got it? Next is value engineering. Value engineering is basically application of value analysis to a new product. If you are creating a new product, then value engineering is applied, just like how value analysis is applied. Value analysis is basically if you are trying to reduce the cost of an existing product by using target costing on an existing product by redesigning it. Okay, so that is what is value analysis and value engineering. The third thing is functional analysis. Okay, I haven't written here, but it's there in the book. So functional analysis is basically is there in Anjum build as well as study material also. It must be there in a case scenario. So functional analysis is that you are trying to understand what kind of functions are being added to a product. You are separating each of these functions from the product, seeing if any of the function makes sense to the customer. Makes sense as in if it adds value, if it is valuable for the customer. If it's not, remove it, reduce the cost. If it is, add it, add the value. You have to have a combination of the functions in such a manner that your value and cost are managed nicely. You don't have to reduce the value of the product. You have to provide the value as per the customer's requirements, but you have to also reduce the cost. So we have to look at the functions in such a manner if the function is required or not. I'll give you an example. Okay, look at this very carefully. Yep, can you see me now? Yeah, you can, right? You can see this handle? Yeah, you can. So this is a adjustable handle. All right, I'm not showing off. Come on, listen to this very carefully. This is an adjustable handle, right? This handle is adjustable. Why? Because I need it. If I don't, I would have not paid extra for it, right? There are multiple kinds of chairs available. Some of them have this, some of them don't have this. I'm giving you an example to make you understand functional analysis. This is a function. This adjustable handle is a function being added to this chair because the customer is ready to pay extra for it, because the customer requires it. If they don't, it will not be added. And the cost of this product will be reduced. Got it? That is functional analysis. Now there are certain questions to ask when you are applying value analysis or engineering or functional analysis, not functional analysis, but VA and VE. If you are applying them, ask certain questions like, can we eliminate functions from production process? From process, not product. From process. Second is, can we eliminate durability? Can we minimize the design? Can we design the product in a much better manner? Can we substitute parts to reduce the cost? Can we combine certain steps to improve productivity? Can we take suppliers assistance to reduce the cost? And ultimately, a very general or generic question, is there a better way of doing things? Thinking right from the scratch, if you have to restart everything right from the beginning, would there be a better way of doing the things? So you ask all these questions when you are applying value analysis and value engineering. Remember this very carefully. I'm going to link chapter 4 with chapter number 3. I told you in chapter 3 as well that when we are applying value analysis and value engineering, major cost reduction target might be understood here only. Major, not all. So once you have established this, keep asking these questions again and again. Keep running the steps again and again on a continuous basis in an incremental manner. Slowly and gradually you will get significant results. That is Kaizen costing. So whenever you have to apply Kaizen costing, remember this very carefully. First step you do is apply value analysis or value engineering, and then you apply Kaizen costing. Got it? Now, a few problems with target costing is it's a lengthy process because so many designs have to be made, and then you get the target cost. You might not get it sometimes. There could be finger pointing. What is that? I'm going to point fingers at you. Okay, so imagine this. The procurement department is told to reduce the cost. Good enough. But the total cost that I'm required to reduce is, let's say, 50 rupees. And I'm asking the procurement department to reduce 45 rupees out of this 50 rupees. Now they're going to say, sir, you are expecting way too much out of us. You have to focus on the other departments as well. You cannot expect us to reduce this much amount of cost. We would have to work so much, and this might not even be possible still. So there would be finger pointing that you are expecting more out of us, lesser out of the other departments. So the burden of this cost reduction has to fall upon all the departments in more or less equal manner. Okay, otherwise there would be finger pointing. That is difficulty consenting. See, the target costing technique is going to affect multiple functions and departments in your organization. So when you are forming a target costing team to implement target costing, you need to have one representative from each and every department that is going to be affected by target costing application, right? When you do it, and when they are working on multiple designs to achieve the target cost, there would be difficulty in everyone consenting to the same thing, right? This is going to again create and make it a lengthy process. Detailed cost data is required so that you can understand what kind of cost is estimated as per the multiple designs. This is required. And quality problem. What is quality problem? So when you are understanding that we have to reduce the cost, achieve the cost reduction target, we have to change the material composition, use a cheaper substitute maybe, and in this case you might compromise on the quality. So there could be quality problems, even though we are saying we are trying to retain the quality, but this might happen in the real scenario that you face quality problems. Now what is the role of management accountant in this case? So this person is going to run the cost estimates for each and every design that the design team makes. Capital budgeting requests are to be accepted and understood by a management accountant, and this person is going to calculate if the capital budgeting works or not. Then this guy is also going to explain each and every person in the target costing team what the nature of the costs are going to be and how they affect the cost of the entire product if the design is changed. Then cost reduction target has to be calculated by this management accountant, and then cost benefit trade-off, benefit of applying target costing and then cost of applying target costing. This trade-off has to be understood by this management accountant. Okay. Coming to very important parts, highlight this or star market. Most useful situations being asked again and again. Direct theory question. Most useful situations of applying target costing, you always have to start with this red thing, which is that whenever majority of the product costs are locked in during the design phase, you have to apply the target costing. Okay, majority of the product costs are locked in, committed during the design phase. Then you have to apply target costing. A few examples would be assembly oriented industries, industries with diversification, industries with factory automation, or products with shorter product life cycle. Okay, target costing is most useful. You don't have to write straight away this before writing this. This is important. This is the stuff. Okay, what this red thing is the stuff. You have to start with this and then you can add this. Target costing control points. Okay, there are 3 points. One is principal control point. Whenever the cost of maintaining this target team, target costing application team, exceeds the savings that you might have resulted from the design changes, then you would stop it. Second is point of go or no go decision, which is basically that if the target costing is not reached, you might take a step and a decision that we have to have a hard stop, otherwise the cost will exceed. Okay, so you would abandon the design project, maybe look at it later sometime. Third is milestone in terms of time or points. You might say that within 1 month, if we do it, we do it. We don't, then we stop it. Or specific activities. Specific activities are done. If we've done it, cool. If we've not, stop it. This is target costing control points. Okay, this is what is target costing. Moving to the next, which is life cycle costing. What we have here is multiple life stages of a product: introduction, growth, maturity, decline. 4 stages. We're going to understand characteristics and strategies to be used, characteristics of the stages, strategies to be used under each and every stage, then benefits of product lifecycle costing and uses of product lifecycle costing. Okay, let's get started. First is introduction stage. Few of the characteristics are: first is in the introduction stage, you focus on the branding, the packaging, the labeling, the distribution, promotional expenses. You try to attract various marketing channels, make promotional efforts so that you make the people aware about your product, because this is introduction. You're trying to introduce your product. Second is you also focus on the pricing. You try to keep it either low if you are going for a penetration pricing, or you keep it high if you're going for a skimming pricing strategy. Third is product refinement are not possible at the introduction stage. You have just launched the product. You cannot refine it right in the introduction stage. So it will happen in the growth stage or maybe the maturity stage, not at introduction stage. Fourth, profits are going to be low or negative. Why? Because your cost is going to be high because you started with low production levels. So your cost per unit is going to be high because you are not having economies of large scale production. Plus your fixed cost per unit is going to be high. Number of units is less, fixed cost is fixed. So per unit fixed cost is high. And if your pricing is, whichever the pricing is, your promotional efforts are also, promotional cost is also going to be high. This way your profits are going to be low or negative in the initial stages. Then who will purchase from you? Buyers who are most ready to buy are focused. Okay, basically the buyers who you think will not wait for it to get established. They see something new and they run to purchase it. Okay, these kind of buyers are the buyers you want to focus upon. Then there will be fewer competitors producing a basic version of your product, or there might be no competitor at all. But if there are, they will be producing the basic version of this product. Okay, that is how it's going to be. These are the characteristics of introduction stages. What strategies can you use? First of all, you have to raise awareness. So do everything that you can to raise awareness. You also have to induce customers to make them try your product. Okay, give them for free, called a freemium approach. Okay, first free, then put more features, purchase it. Okay, like most of the applications, how they work, you try to induce the customers by saying it's free, use it. Then in-app purchases, right? Induce customers. Third is strengthen or expand the channel. You have to expand your marketing channel, distribution channel, so that you can reach out to more and more people. Boost channel intermediaries. What is this? You have to provide incentive to the brokers, agents, wholesalers, retailers. Okay, everyone who is an intermediary, you have to incentivize them so that they are ready to market your product the most compared to any other product. Okay, last one. Set price in alignment with the competitive realities. It depends on what kind of product there is, what kind of customers are there, and accordingly, if they will be price inelastic, accordingly you have to set the price. Moving to growth stage. The characteristics of growth stage is in the growth stage, what happens is in the initial growth stage, okay, the growth of the sales is very high. In the later part of the growth stage, the sales is still growing, but not at that pace, okay, at a reduced pace. It's still growing, by the way, but at a reduced pace than the initial growth stage. Okay, so the characteristics are same or high promotion spending so that you can expand to the markets, educate the market, new channels, improve, add features to your product, or strategic lowering of prices so that it can it can reach to the mass market. Second is product awareness to product conviction. First, you are making people aware about your product. Now they are aware. You are in your growth stage. You have to have loyalty. You have to make them loyal for your product. Okay. Third is trade-off between high profits and high market share. Either you go for high profits or you go for high market share. If you want to go for high market share, you have to reduce the price, lower down your profits, but that will increase your reach. Third is increase in competition. More and more people come in, right? More competitors will start making your product. Your product will not be unique anymore. So that's why also you have to reduce the price. Fourth, the last one, sales increase at an increased rate in the initial growth stage. Okay? They do increase at an increased rate in the initial one. At a later stage, at the end of the growth stage, they do increase, but at a decreased rate. Okay. Strategies. Clear brand identity should be there. You have to have a brand identity. Branding, focus on the branding. Second is control product quality. You have to have focus on your quality so that you can retain the customers. Your acquisition happened in the introduction stage. In the growth stage also acquisition was happening, but in the growth stage retention is to be focused upon. Third is strong channel base so that you can reach out to mass market. Fourth is price demand balance has to be maintained, so you have to work on the price elasticity, focus upon that, focus on the market forces, decide the price. Acquisition to retention, focus shifts. As I just mentioned, it shifts from acquisition of the customers to retention of the customers. Long-term relations are trying to be built with major players, as in service providers, suppliers, etc. Value-based pricing is done. Use differential advantage for stronger market. Okay, so what you have to do is competition is increasing, prices are being reduced, so you have to have differential advantages so that you have a strong market hold. You have a greater market share. Okay. Growth stage, maturity stage, what are the characteristics? First of all, it is a marketing challenge because there is no new distribution channel. You've already expanded to the maximum that you could because you've reached the maturity, right? So marketing challenges are there. There is no new distribution channel. How will you market now the old product? Second is intense competition. All the players that could have entered into the market have already entered during the growth stage. At the maturity stage, they have also reached the maturity because it's not the it's not the it's not the organization who's reaching the maturity stage. It's the product. They have come with the same product, so their product has also reached the maturity stage. Okay. So there is intense competition. There is over capacity in the industry. Laggard buyers enter the market now. Okay, those who were very slow to enter a market, try a new product, they will come enter in the maturity stage. But moreover, you would be dependent upon replacement demand, or you would be dependent upon population growth for your sales. Okay, then your profit is going to decline because you have to reduce the price or match with the competitors to either match with them, beat them, so that you can snatch away their customers to your, and your profit is going to decline accordingly. Then high R&D budget so that you can create new product. Strategies. First is you have to focus upon strong marketing because you have to differentiate your product from the competitor's product because they are also there with the same product and everyone is almost at the same price. So anything that can differentiate you is strong marketing. Second is improve features of your product. If you can bring out new features in your product, that is going to be helping with the differentiation. Third is reduce price if you can, if it's possible, reduce the price further so that you can attract more customers from your competitors organization to yours. Sales promotion incentives. Okay, 1+1, 1+2 free. Okay, offers 50% discount, and intensive distribution. Decline stage. The characteristics of the decline stage is sales decline to either low or zero during the market changes, profit starts declining or becoming negative again, organizations drop products, exit the market. Strategies: either add new features or offer to loyal customers, or discontinue or replace the product with a new launch event or new launch product, maintain or liquidate the price so that you can sell as much you have and then just get done with it. Now the benefits of PLC is that earlier actions to generate revenue or lower cost can be taken because you're looking at the entire product life cycle, so you also focus upon the other stages of life cycle, so you can take earlier action to generate revenue and lower cost. Second is more accurate and realistic assessment of revenue or cost because you are looking at the entire life cycle. Third is it promotes long term rewarding because again of course the entire life cycle of the product. Fourth is considers the total incremental cost over entire lifespan. For example, R&D might not be considered under the normal approach, but PLC would consider R&D as well, right? Fifth, long-term picture of product line, profitability, economic impact of alternatives. So again, long-term impact. Then control of manufacturing cost, because at the design stage you already know what kind of costs are being incurred during the entire product life cycle. You can take the control of that. Traces R&D cost, just what I said. Traces R&D cost over entire life. Then the user as a planning tool, as a control tool, as a forecasting. As a forecasting, it is not very useful because sales exhibit uh, various trends. Okay, might not exhibit the same as the historical ones. So forecasting is a little difficult, but it might help. Okay, this is product life cycle. Moving to the third one, Pareto. Pareto is basically you have to focus, it helps you focus on the most important aspects. It's a prioritization tool. If you have multiple things, you apply Pareto, and based on this rule of Pareto, you would be able to focus on the priorities. You would be able to identify the priorities. Okay, so it focuses on the most important aspects of decision making so that we can simplify the process. We don't have to focus on all, we have to focus on the most important aspects. How to identify this? It's based on 80-20 rule. Okay, I'll be telling you about this 80-20 rule in just a minute. So it focuses on the 80-20 rule, helps to establish the top priorities to identify both profitable and unprofitable targets. Okay, I'll give you example. 20% of the products may have 80% of the sales of your organization. So the top level management is going to focus upon the pricing of these 20% products rather than 100% of the products. For the 80% of the products remaining, the pricing would be delegated to the lower level of management. Okay, similarly, if you do customer profitability analysis, you will identify 20% of the customers generate 80% of the profits for the organization. So you have to focus upon these 20% customers. Similarly, if you do an ABC analysis, you will identify for stock control. Okay, ABC for stock control. You will identify that 20% of the items have 80% value. Focus upon these, not the other ones. Focus upon 20% of the items. Activity based costing, you will identify that 20% of the cost drivers cause 80% of the total cost. Okay, there are 20% activities due to which 80% of the cost is being incurred. So focus upon these 20% activities. When you are applying value chain analysis, you are trying to identify the activities, trying to focus upon them, identify which is value adding, which is non-value adding. So what you can do is use Pareto, identify the activities, then apply this Pareto analysis to identify these 20% cost drivers, 20% activities which cause the 80% of the total cost. You can focus upon these 20% activities first. Saves time, makes it more efficient. Yes. So decision making becomes easier. Last one, quality control. 80% of the problems come from 20% of the causes. So focus upon these 20% root problems. 80% of your problems will be handled. Okay, this is the use of Pareto. Understood? Now it's useful to prioritize the problems, goals, objectives to identify root causes. Then you can select and define key quality improvement programs. You can also select key customer relation programs, key employee relation programs, key performance improvement programs, allocate physical, financial, human resources to the important aspects. This use of Pareto, the pros of Pareto is it looks at the root causes so that we can work at the root level, eliminate if there is any problem right from the root problem. Next is identify significance of each cause, prioritize where to focus, optimal use of scarce resources because we are focusing our resources on the important aspects, act as a control mechanism. Cons, problem may be small but it may grow and you are not going to focus upon it until it grows. So while it is growing, your focus is not going to be there. because of Pareto. It works like that. Second is it relies on the accuracy of data. If the data is not accurate, Pareto will give you wrong results based on historical data, based on the numbers. If the numbers are wrong, Pareto is wrong. Pareto is wrong, decision is wrong. So relies on the accuracy of data. Third, wrong identification of cost. Okay. So basically, how it should be best applied is not known. So therefore, cons of Pareto. Finally, the last one, which is environmental management accounting. It's a process. How accounting works is a process of collection, analysis, okay, basically also reporting the accounting information. Here we are doing everything about that, but not accounting information. This information is related to the environmental cost, and this is used for internal decision making and sometimes for reporting. Okay, so EMA is basically accounting, but from the environmental point of view, right? Collection analysis of the information relating to environmental cost, mostly for internal decision making, but also sometimes for reporting. So this is integration of best management accounting thinking with best environmental management practice. Okay. Now the internal costs have a direct impact on the income statement of a company, but the external costs are imposed on the society at large, and these are not borne by the company, at least directly. The classification. Now there are certain classifications given to this environmental management cost. Okay, environmental cost basically. Classifications, one is given by Hansen and Mendoza, second given by US EPA, third given by United Nations Division for Sustainable Development. We have all three of them in our syllabus. Let's look at this. First, Hansen Mendoza classification. You have to remember the names as well. Okay, so Hansen Mendoza classification. There are four: prevention, appraisal, internal failure, external failure. Okay, prevention is basically any cost that is incurred to prevent adverse environmental impact. Example, you can have a control equipment for pollution, you can have environmental policies being made, you can have environmental driven R&D, you can have site studies, feasibility studies, you can have protective equipment investment. All of these things are to protect, to prevent any adverse environmental impact. Prevention cost. Appraisal cost is to determine whether the product, process, activities that you have done are in compliance with your environmental standards or not, or as per the law if there is any law. Example would be testing, contamination test, environmental audit, compliance with the regulations. All of these tests are going to be forming part of appraisal cost. Next is internal failure cost. Failure cost comprises of first cost from the activities that have been produced but not discharged into the environment. So basically, let's say you have created scrap. This scrap was not discharged into the environment, but you recycled it. So there was a cost incurred for recycling of the scrap. Would have not been incurred if you did not generate scrap. Okay, so the scrap is internal failure. The cost for internal failure is the recycling cost. Got it? Similarly, if you have to dispose toxic material, disposing is not throwing away, disposing is treating the toxic material. Okay, disposing is treating. So treating toxic material, you paid some amount for treating it. The cost incurred was internal failure cost. Did not discharge the toxic material into the environment. Did not. You treated it. So treatment did make you incur cost which would have not been incurred if you did not have toxic material. Similarly, decommissioning cost, again internal failure cost. Now what are the external failure cost? External failure cost would be cost from activities performed after discharging waste into the environment. So you discharge the waste into the environment, polluted the soil, let's say, then trying to clean up the soil. The cleaning cost for the pollution that you have caused is going to be external failure cost. Or you have to incur cost to restore the land to the natural state. That cost is going to be external failure cost. Alright. Second classification is given by US EPA. Okay, there are four kinds of cost again here in US EPA classification. First is conventional cost. Conventional cost is basically they are trying to say that you use material, utilities, resources in a normal way to make your product. What you are not understanding is that use of this resource, the material, the utility also has some environmental impact. For example, if you are using normally plastic you are using for making product, you will not classify the use of plastic as a conventional cost, as a environmental cost. But under US EPA they say that it is also a conventional cost because this also has an environmental impact, right? So use of material, utility, resources is conventional cost. Second is potentially hidden cost. These are mostly treated as overheads and what happens is that they are hidden in the general overheads and then they are improperly allocated to the cost centers. So these costs have to be identified with the identification techniques that we're going to study further. The next topic is identification only. We'll do it, we'll come to it. But first you have to understand this potentially hidden costs are hidden in the general overheads. Have to be bifurcated from them, allocated to cost centers. I'll give you an example. Transportation cost pollution, but transportation cost was hidden in the general overheads, not treated as a potentially hidden environmental cost. Should have been because it caused pollution, right? Next, contingent cost. Contingent cost is something which depends on contingency. You might have to incur it, you might not have to incur it in future. So may or may not be incurred in future. Example, penalty, legal expense. Next, relationship and corporate image. So basically any cost that you incur to affect the perception of the people or the customers or the employees or the management or the government, etc. This cost that is incurred to change their perception about the organization, to affect their subjective perceptions, is called relationship and corporate image cost. Okay, example, cost of preparing environmental reports. When you prepare environmental reports, it's like a PR activity, public relation, right? This relationship and corporate image cost is that. Then last classification is given by United Nations Division for Sustainable Development. They have two. First is cost, any cost that is incurred to protect the environment, basically just like preventive, one type of classification. Second is any inefficiency in the production process also going to lead to cost. Covers all the other kinds. That is cost of inefficiencies in the production process. Then how would you identify the environmental cost out of general overheads? One is input output analysis. Input output analysis tell you that material inflow has to be balanced with the material outflow on the basis of quantity, example kg, and it should match. The difference between them is the environmental cost. So input is equals to output. That is the ideal scenario. But output is going to be lesser than the input because the rest of it is a waste. That is environmental cost. Flow cost accounting is using input output analysis but at all the different stages of the production. So at each and every stage you will be recording the wastage for that particular stage with regards to the quantity, with regards to the value of it. Okay. So that is input output analysis plus organizational structure. Material losses at various stages of production are recorded under flow cost accounting. Next, life cycle costing is cost and revenues over the whole life are considered. So full environmental cost will be considered over the entire life of the product. Example, if you would have not used life cycle costing, you would have never considered decommissioning cost as the environmental cost. But when you use life cycle, that cost that is going to be incurred, you know it is going to be incurred, not contingent, fixed, but will be incurred later. Under life cycle costing, you already consider it as environmental cost. Activity based costing is using cost drivers to allocate the internal cost to cost centers and drivers on the basis of activities. Environment related cost uh, is going to be allocated to the cost centers. Environment driven cost is going to be allocated to the cost drivers. These costs are generally hidden in the overheads, so we try to identify it and identify it out of the general overheads on the basis of the cost drivers. Okay, example, volume, toxicity, cost of treating different kind of emission, volume into output per unit of volume. All of these could be the uh, criteria on the basis of which you identify the cost. Then you try to control the environmental cost. Why? I'll tell you why we have to control and then we'll come to controlling. So first, reasons for controlling. First, you have to have a balance of the carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is basically a measure of how much carbon is being emitted or released by an organization. Okay, so you want to reduce it to a particular level so that you are matching with your carbon footprint, not exceeding it. And if you have, let's say, a level, let's say you can emit something in units 5,000 and you have used entire 5,000, good, cool. If you have done 6,000, not good, not cool. If you have done 4,000, you will have 1,000 balance. This 1,000 balance can be sold to other players. Okay, we have a carbon credit. You can use it, pay us the money. They will use it because they might exceed their level. Okay, it will help them. So it acts as a revenue source also. So this is a reason for controlling carbon footprint has to be maintained. Second is costs are becoming huge. Most of the environmental costs are adding huge amount of cost to the organizations. So you have to work and reduce them. Okay. Third is regulation is also increasing and awareness is also increasing. So you want to keep a check on it so that regulation doesn't become a problem. Also, people are getting more aware about it. So that's the reason for controlling. These are the reasons for controlling. Okay. Now, how would you control? First is waste. Waste works like input output analysis. The approach is called mass balance approach, works in the same way. Input is equals to output is the thing, is the ideal scenario. Any difference is the waste. Water, you have to decrease the consumption. They pay, any organization pays for water twice, first to purchase it, second to use to dispose it. Okay, so you want to reuse the water, you have to recycle the water, use water harvesting techniques and other reverse osmosis of the water and other techniques so that water can be saved. Third is energy. So energy also adds up a lot of cost to the organization. So you want to have energy efficient practices, energy efficient equipments so that you can reduce the energy cost. Fourth is transportation and travel cost. So also adding a lot of cost to the organization. So you can have fuel efficient vehicles, you can have route optimization so that the lesser kilometers one has to travel and accordingly fuel is saved. Consumables and raw materials, then you have to focus upon the usage and the cost accordingly. Do the analysis where they are being used, how can you reduce them, and then reduce the cost. This is controlling. Now the benefit of using EMA is going to be, one, you understand the cost better so you can have a different pricing, because once you understand the cost you can change the price as well. There are certain costs that you might not be considering before when you had decided the price, but now when you do, you can change the price. There could be a re-evaluation of profit also as per that. You might have to redesign also, so redesigning process might also work out, and you might have to phase out certain products if they are adding cost or making loss. So that is the benefit of EMA. This brings us to the end of chapter 4. Hope you understood it. Thank you so much for watching. All the best. I'll see you next time with chapter 5, which is decision making. We're not going to solve questions on that because it's not possible for us to solve so many questions from this chapter, from chapter 6 from chapter 5 decision making. But what we'll be doing is I'll be covering all the kinds of topics that come in the exam, the most optimistic scenario of the questions, or the most asked questions from particular topics and how they could be approached. Okay, it's going to be a short video. I'm sure you might love it. So do watch it. And for that, to get the notification for that video, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time.